the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AV Nation.
This is AV Nation.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the LightCast. I'm your host, JP Bedell, with my co-host, Megan Mazzocco. Hey, Megan.
Hi, JP. How's it going tonight?
Excellent. It's been a busy week. I think everyone's recovering from Education Week here in New York, but I cannot complain. How are things in your neck of the woods?
Really good, except it's supposed to be spring, and I think it snowed almost every day this week.
It's been ridiculous here, too.
But we've been keeping busy inside, working and, painting and projects.
So the last time our listeners got to see us, we were actually together physically in the same place at the same time at Education. Before we get to our guest, did you have anything left on Education you wanted to share with everybody?
No, I don't think so. I am going to be preparing a little bit about it in the next SSL online. That should be going on the 20th. And then also there'll be a little column in the product development section of Architectural Products magazine about Education as well. So I'll sum my thoughts up there. But it was really exciting. It was really big just because of the 10th year, and so there was a lot of buzz and a lot of really positive energy, and the educational programs component, I got to pop in on some of those, and I was really impressed. So it's great to be there.
Excellent, and it was great to see you in person.
Yeah.
All right. Without further ado, let's talk about our guests. Mr. Robert Sonneman is our guest this week, and we are thrilled to have him on the show. Robert is the founder of Sonneman, A Way of Light, which has been at the forefront of lighting in the design world for almost 5 decades. Robert served in the Navy. He created lighting products for George Kovacs. He served as CEO of Ralph Lauren Home Product Development. And he is the leader of Sonneman, A Way of Light, which has introduced over 30 collections with 100 different designs, and has most recently debuted their latest products at the Dallas International Light Show. Robert, welcome to LightCast.
Well, thank you, JP. Glad to be here. And hi, Megan.
Hi, thank you so much. It was really nice to meet you last week, and it's great to have you on the show.
I can't think of a better way to end the week.
Me neither. This is great.
I hope there's a drink somewhere in your vicinity so that you can relax.
There's a drink, but it's not vodka yet.
Fair enough. So let's start at the very beginning. Let's start at what compelled you to work with light as a medium. Why lighting versus some other form of furniture or interior design? What got you there?
Well, it was kind of a fortuitous experience. 3 days out of the Navy, I answered an ad in the New York Times for George Kovacs, who had a small store on Madison Avenue, and lo and behold, I interviewed on Monday, and he hired me, and I started on that Tuesday morning. So I got out of the Navy Friday night, and Tuesday morning I was working in George Kovacs' store.
Wow.
And,
talk about a New York minute.
It was in a room. And years later, when I became sort of known for what I was doing, George hung a sign in the store saying, "Robert Sonneman swept here."
So, why were you just sort of applying to any jobs you could get?
No, actually, my parents were in the lighting industry.
Okay.
They manufactured traditional lighting, and so when I saw the ad for a lighting store, it was it's kind of a natural fit.
Got it. So you had experience growing up with it.
I had experience growing up in the manufacturing and distribution side. That's correct.
Okay, okay. So this is that. So the
Of course,
beginning.
there were candles at the time, but
So well, and tell us where this was. What
it
city?
was on Madison Avenue in Manhattan, on 72nd Street, and he had newly or within a few years formed this store that was selling lighting that was imported from Austria and decorative accessories. And after I worked with him for a little bit, I sort of convinced him that we were better off doing lighting than doing lighting and decorative accessories, and that we were better off building a brand that was known for something rather than everything.
Right, right. And so, so your experience as a kid growing up was in the lighting business. Were you heavily involved in your parents' business, or?
I couldn't have been that heavily involved because I was only 17 when I went in the Navy.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
So, but no, growing up in the city, I did have the benefit of New York City as a nurturing environment,
Mm-hmm.
and I did have a lot of experience in art and at the Art Students League and the Museum of Modern Art and places like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so art was always part of my daily vision, life.
Got it. Got it. And so, while you worked for at George Kovacs' place, were you actively when did you start actively developing product?
Well, I worked my way through college.
Okay.
I went back. George told me when I first started that he couldn't understand why I would take this job because he was sure I was going to go to college, and this was in February, and I assured him that I wasn't, and I of course didn't until September. But and then I worked my way through school. I studied business, working for George part-time in the afternoons and on Saturdays.
Gotcha, gotcha. So you worked your way through college.
A great deal. Pardon me?
No, I'm just reviewing. So you worked your way through college.
I went through, yes.
No, so go ahead. Go ahead.
What'd you say?
Oh, no. So you worked your way through college with a business degree, is that right?
Yes, I got a degree. I went to Long Island University,
Okay.
on campus, and I lived in the city, and I commuted back and forth. Actually, sometimes two round trips a day. And somehow I got through 4 years of that. And when I graduated, I was actually considering going to law school, and I had gotten married in the Philippines. And George said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I think I'm going to go in manufacturing." And I was 22.
Okay.
So I was at that point vice president of George Kovacs, and we had grown. And so he said, "Well, why don't you start it for me, and we'll see where it goes." And so I took a factory in Queens, and I designed a line, and I went to the show, which was the first show in those days, and this is quite a while ago, was in the Palmer House in Chicago.
Okay.
Oh, nice city.
So now I have to ask, just because I'm a Queens kid, where in Queens was the initial facility?
Excuse me, vodka's later. The INIF was in Woodside.
Okay.
Woodside, Queens, right off, and it was a great experience, and I built that factory, and I built the products, and then I went on the road, and I called on the customers, and so it was a really good training ground. And a year later, when George told me that he didn't think that I would be getting equity in the situation, I left, and I formed another company called Sonneman, and I formed that in 1967. And I put together a syndicate on a weekend of investors, and I raised, it was kind of like Shark Tank, but it wasn't.
Right.
And I raised $75,000, which was in 1967 was a real number, and designed a line and started a factory and took it to the shows and built the business. And I had that company for 18 years. I sold it, bought it back, and sold it again.
Gotcha, gotcha. So I think the lesson for anybody that's students that might be listening, or anybody that's sort of getting out in the business, is the diversity of experience that you had coming into the industry. You weren't just an artist, you weren't just a designer, you weren't just a business person. You drew from all of those places to sort of build what you had.
Well, it's a funny story about becoming a designer. I didn't really realize that I was a designer. I was designing products and thinking that I was just doing the line. And the first couple of products I did, one was called Orbiter, was picked up by the Museum of Modern Art. It wasn't kept there, but it was picked up there. It was there on display for a matter of weeks. And I was sitting on the terrace of a friend of mine some years later, who said to me, or maybe a year or two later, he said to me, this guy was a pretty well-known designer, Neil Small, and he said to me, Robert, you're a great designer. And I said, what's a designer? And so it was at that point that I began to identify with my role, in designing and developing, creating products. Of course, that later went on to architecture and lots of other kinds of products. And so that was a story after the first lighting company, or actually it was started during the first lighting company.
I see.
I created Sonneman Design Group in 1974, which is actually still operates today, and we still do all of the creative. And we did lots and lots of products, and we did lighting products, and we did for 6 or 8 different manufacturers, and we did actually probably for more over that period. And we also did Singer Sewing Machine and Hamilton Beach and Sunbeam Appliance and Black & Decker and lots of those kinds of products. And then we did furniture as well. So it was a pretty diverse design group, and we were basically industrial designers, and it really is where I matured the craft.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So on your website, there's a quote that says, "I continue to investigate the evolutionary and revolutionary as a basis for developing a cosmopolitan American style." My question, I guess, would be, you've been in the business for a while now. How have you seen the evolution of interiors, in lighting and interiors, lighting's relationship to interior spaces? Have you seen a growth there or a change over your time in the business?
Well, obviously there's change. Change is the name of the game in any creative endeavor. But I haven't really. I really had a set of values that was established pretty early, a set of design values that was based on minimalism and modernism and Bauhaus industrialism. And I pretty much stayed with that, although I did do lots of other kinds of product, including some traditional, especially at Ralph Lauren. My focus has always been clean modern design, clean functional modern design, and that is really what it's about. The sort of pathos that was I mentioned in your quote, the uniquely American experience, really came from engagement in other industries as well as lighting. I did a program for Macy's in 170 stores. Through Stanley Furniture, and I created it. They wanted something that was modern but not too modern, and they wanted something that had some kind of unique identity. And I created a line called Urban Primitive, which is, when I presented, they swore they would never use that name, but they did. And in so doing, it was a program that was based upon mission. The mission period of 1910 and the early 1900s, and Frank Lloyd Wright, for example, and Charles Rennie Mackintosh, and that kind of influence, and it was very successful. And in doing it, I did not only the furniture collection, but we also did lighting, and we did domestics, sheets and towels, and those kinds of things, and that really was a a chance to broaden the palette. And in the process of doing it, I realized that sort of the roots of everything I was doing was coming from American mission or American functionalism of the 1900s. And it really became the notion of a uniquely American aesthetic. And that had to do with the size and scale of the American houses and which we tend to be slightly more overscaled than some other cultures and other developed cultures, and it was a great learning process and a great experience.
So I guess the question I would ask is, as you watch the sort of design aesthetic move, I mean, I'm thinking about residential interiors for the moment. Where you see design sort of moving from the 60s and 70s through to today, I feel like modernism is coming back into vogue. I feel like it left for a little while, and it's coming back in now as LED has moved in the lighting world. We're seeing smaller and smaller fixtures, doing smaller and smaller profiles with thinner lines. Do you see that as a reflection of modernism, or do you see that as just a reflection of the technology and people playing with it?
So that's sort of a big question.
Yeah.
With lots of parts to it.
Yeah.
Let me break it down. Modernism really started with modernism what we identify as modernism really started in the 1920s with the Bauhaus. And it had to do with developing an industrial aesthetic, or developing design that could be produced industrially so that it would be available to the masses. That was the thesis of Bauhaus. And in so doing, they of course pulled together a direction that spread, that was rooted in architecture and crafts and fabrication and lots of different crafts, but with the notion that it was not an elitist movement. It was a proletariat kind of movement. It was the design of the people. And so all of the modernist architects, Mies van der Rohe being the father of modern architecture, but Mies van der Rohe and Walter Gropius, when they left Germany, Mies came to New York, and Gropius went to Harvard and taught architecture. But Mies changed the skyline of New York and of the country, and that really was the start of modernism in the United States. And so from roughly the 40s or early 50s through probably the early until about 1983, modernism was the vernacular of architecture, and also was the name of clean design, clean functional design. And then what happened is it began to change, and so people didn't call it modernism anymore. They called it contemporary. And contemporary was a word that at that point in time most of us did not respect or didn't like. But that changed because contemporary came to mean of the day. So as architectural styles have evolved over the last 50 years, interior styles have evolved. And there is absolutely now a tremendous interest in mid-century modernism. Mid-century modernism is roughly the 50s. So the 50s and 60s. And that was when I sort of came to be. 60s was when it was sort of the mid to end of the 60s. But I sort of learned about this through George Kovacs. And he was the guy that introduced me to it. And George was not a designer, but George had spent time in Vienna, and George learned a lot about the ethos of Bauhaus and modern design, which of course then went to Scandinavia and had many incarnations. Did I answer that question?
You did. I mean, I think
a long road to a little house.
I guess what I was, just to loop it back to lighting specifically, since that's the nature of the show.
I'll talk to you about what you asked as the second part.
No, I mean, what fascinates me is the line that you can draw between what sources and technology have been available over, say, since Edison invented the light bulb till today.
So when Edison invented the light bulb, from the time he did that until the last several years, burning a filament was the way we drove light pretty much.
Right.
Sometimes we got to the point where we burned a filament in a gas environment, such as halogen, which excited the burning at a higher temperature. But basically what we did was burn something.
Right.
LED was actually, which is a illuminating diode, was invented in 1939. And what it really is if you can imagine, it's an electronic check valve. If you had a check valve in plumbing, you could push, it would allow water to go through in one direction, which is called rush current, but not back the other way. Well, that process produced energy. And the energy that it produced heat and luminous energy. The problem was that it produced more heat than luminous energy.
Right.
So even though it existed as an electronic component, it did not exist as a viable illuminating device. And that happened later. And in the last 10 years, it began to be applicable. But only really in the last 6 or 8 years has it become really effective.
Were you very critical of LEDs when it first came on the lighting scene, or do you feel like you kind of watched it grow up and develop and were kind of cheering for it all along?
I was late to market with LED. And the reason I was late to market was everybody ran into it, and everybody ran to China and bought LEDs, and they really didn't know about it. And I wanted to learn the science before I felt comfortable working in the medium. And I did. And I spent almost 3 years, just under 3 years, really studying the science and trying to understand what the medium was and what it and how to use it, and before we began to use LED. And LED is such a broad category of electronic product that the quality level varies like grains of sand.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to get into something that I would either not use properly or that wouldn't work.
Right.
And so I was very careful about how we did it. And ultimately, when we did move into it, we made commitments to very, very sophisticated brands. And we used Cree and Nichia and very, very good, even Edison, which is a very good, or Citizen, very, very good brands of product with very consistent performance standards and measurements. So now that we have done that, this line went in 4 years ago or 5 years ago, 4 years ago probably. We were 100%. We were 0 LED, and the following January we were 10% LED, and the following year we were 40% LED, and the next year we were 80% LED, and now we're basically 100% LED.
Wow!
So we are a technology company. We really have invested tremendous energy and brain power and resources into learning the field. and it has changed our life completely, and it changed me as a designer because I could now package and design things, as you mentioned, of a totally different scale, and I could unify the design, I could integrate the design so that it was a more unified approach than to have a separate bulb and shade and base or that kind of approach, or an arm with a bulb at the end. So it really reignited my interest in lighting and in design, and for me it's been inspirational and revolutionary.
So that's wonderful to hear. I love that the technology isn't just about efficiency or energy savings or something, but that it's truly giving you as a designer a new set of tools, a new playground to work with. I think that's fantastic. That's something that we don't hear enough of, I think, when we talk about the industry.
Well, that has to do with development of the form factor, and that's true, but we are concerned with efficiency, and we're concerned with the efficacy of the product, because that really is what validates the product for being. And so it is not, for me, it's a great opportunity to design more interesting and simpler forms, and to design applications that were not available to us when we were using incandescent or halogen or metal halide or fluorescent. But we are very attuned to the efficiency for a number of reasons. Not only do we want to build more efficient products for the obvious reasons that everyone else does, but also there is an efficiency in design when you can minimize the quantity of LEDs and the quantity of heat and the quantity of energy that it takes to drive the lumen output.
Sure. Megan, did you have something? I felt like you were about to jump in on something. I don't want to step on it.
Oh no. I think that it actually got looped in. I was just thinking about, besides the the lighting, the efficiency, the small size, allowing for different form factors. I know that a lot of designers, architects and interior designers are really excited about LEDs just because they can put it, they can integrate it into and put it next to so many different materials and finishes that typically, you couldn't do with another light source. So I was just going to ask if that's something that you're also applying to your luminaire design.
Absolutely. Excuse me for stepping on that. Integrating lighting into the architecture was the goal of every lighting designer and every architect in the 20th and 21st century. I think a good example of what LED has done for me, I mean, if you look at the line, you'll see, by the way, we produce over 1,800 products. We do over 100 products a year. And right now, just about almost, I would say, there's a lot of products that have been in the line for a while, but pretty much, I would say probably 80% of the entire line is LED. But a good example of what LED let me do as a designer is, if you look at our collection called Suspenders. Suspenders is imagined as a skeletal structure, a very, very light frame skeletal structure that allowed you to build it as long, as wide, or as deep as you wanted. And the problem was that when I designed it in 1989, actually the patent was issued in 1990, the first patents, the concept was great, but we couldn't execute it. We could make limited fixtures, but we couldn't make build this on this grand scale because we were using magnetic transformers and halogen lights, 20 or 50 watt halogen lights. And now we are doing Suspenders is all LED. And so we can build a system that is unlimited in terms of the kinds of applications and the kinds of things that you can do with it. And it was really, truly an example of technology-enabled design.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's, I try not to too closely marry the two things. I like to try and think about design as one set of disciplines and technology as another set of disciplines. But as you talk to people in the field, that especially the way lighting has developed over the last, as you said, 10 years or so, it's impossible to divorce the rapid improvement in not only efficiency but also in color consistency, in output, and in dimming from the developments that designers have come out with in the last, say 5 years. I think there's just been an incredible explosion in the quality and diversity of LED products. Again, in the last 5 years or so. You said at the beginning, people were jumping into it when the product wasn't necessarily ready. But we're seeing now that the product is ready for prime time, and it's really, really what makes me happy is whenever we see LED doing something unique. My biggest frustration in the industry is when you see LED doing when they jam it into like the A-lamp form factor, right? Like, the thing that it can do that, but it's not really meant to do that. I like to see designers taking this medium and doing something brand new with it, and that it's really exciting to see that.
One of the things that I did from the beginning, and that now we are doing as a team, is we did not try to take existing lighting or existing form factors and make them LED.
Mm-hmm.
We looked at the medium and said, what can we achieve with LED that we couldn't achieve with classical materials or classical technology? And I think that really has opened up the world to us. We're doing some pretty incredible things. There are many companies doing some great things, doing great things with LED, and there are many designers and engineers who really have accelerated the whole opportunity scale of what this technology has brought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. So before we wrap up and head to Lighting Vitals, what are we looking forward to in 2016? What are some of the things that you're experimenting with in the lighting side, that you're doing that we should think about?
Well, 2016 is over. 2016 was over for us in January because we're working on 17 and now on 18, and we're looking to integrate the technology more into the architecture. We're looking to build product that is universal. We're looking to build things that are system-based. We're expanding our vision of what the environment, what an interior architectural space can be, and what we can do within the space by using very interesting applications of LED illumination and controls.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're very excited. We're in a very, very prolific period, and we are really pushing the envelope as hard as we can every day.
That's exciting to hear. Robert Sonneman, you are a fantastic guest. I could talk to you for the next 3 hours, but our run length doesn't let us do that. So I'm going to have to stop the interview portion here. This is where Megan and I do our segment, Lighting Vitals. It's news coming out of the industry. You're welcome to stick around with us and comment if you'd like. Otherwise, do what you have to do.
Okay, thanks. If it's okay with you, I'm going to sign off.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers. Have a great weekend.
You will.
You too.
Thanks, Robert.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Now it's on to Lighting Vitals. That couple of pieces of information that since the last time we've chatted that we want to talk to you about. I have two this week, or this taping. The first one, they're both trade show related. One is a piece of gossip, the other is a piece of real news. So the first is Light and Buildings 2016 set both an attendance and exhibitor record which doesn't shock me. I feel like everybody I was talking to in the lighting industry was headed to Frankfurt this year. Mm-hmm. Neither of us, of course, got to go, but it was, from everything I've seen, from folks that were sharing via social media, it was a great show, and getting the sense of the differences between how European manufacturers and American manufacturers think about lighting. I encourage anybody to get on Twitter, look at the hashtag. I think it was LB16. Get on the Light and Building website. Really, really amazing stuff. And I'm not surprised that show keeps growing year after year after year. The other piece of gossip, and I hate to report gossip, but Edison Report posted this morning or earlier today that Ellie McLeod has left Lightfair. No, we don't have any confirmation on that, but Ellie was one of the leaders of the trade show for a long time. Sort of surprising to hear that she's potentially leaving the show. Lightfair's in San Diego this year. I've heard very mixed reactions from folks about San Diego as a site. I have no idea what the attendance and registration numbers have been thus far, but both from the manufacturer and from the designers and reps and everybody else in the industry, they're not sure about San Diego as a site. It's sort of not close to anything. It's not necessarily going to pull the LA crowd in. So it's a bit of a wild card. So I don't know if that was part of the deal. I don't know anything about it. I just know that this is what's up on Edison Report, which is generally fairly reliable, and so that's the latest out of Lightfair. If you're headed to Lightfair, I want to hear about it. I want to hear about what's going on at the show, because this is another one that Megan and I won't be able to get to. So feel free to tell us on Twitter. I'm at James Bedell. Megan is at Megatorial. We'd love to hear from you guys. All right. And Megan, anything else on the Lighting Vitals?
I was just noticing that I've been getting several reports, I would say since the Super Bowl, about LED lighting coming to stadiums. So I know there's a lot of people with theatrical backgrounds and set design and set lighting that are really rooting for that to be the case. So I'm really excited to see that it's that I think it's ready for prime time.
Yeah. So the split on stadium lighting is the stage lighting rigs have been LED for quite a while. The long throw sort of field lighting, like if you're talking about a soccer pitch or a football field,
yeah.
Up until really the last, I'm going to say, year or so, it's been hard to match the efficacy of of metal halide in high output long throw scenarios. You could get it as bright, but not necessarily as focused, et cetera, et cetera. We're starting to see that change. There was actually a show recently. I'm going to botch this now, but the Green Sports Alliance, I want to call it. It might not be accurate, but I can go back and look. They hosted an event in New Jersey for NBA venues demonstrating different LED technology. Mm-hmm. And they invited different manufacturers to do mock-ups to show how you can light a basketball court with LED, specifically because they want to try and reduce the footprint of sporting events. So it's coming. It's just a matter of getting the technology where it needs to be.
And the other thing that if I were going to be at Lightfair, or if I was at Light and Building, one thing that caught my eye at Leducation was optics, and we didn't get to talk about it with Robert, but the luminaire that he was speaking about, suspenders, it has two different kind of optic lens choices, and I find that the lens materials and the optics are really maturing, as well as the chip quality and the binning and the two McAdam steps.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that's also going to really further the integration into the architectural space. as well as, the creative luminaire design with LEDs as well. So that's what I would be looking for if I was headed to Light Fair.
Absolutely. All right, I think we're going to wrap it there. The LightCast is hosted by me, James Bedell, and Megan Mazzocco. You can find me at James Bedell on Twitter and at Negatorial on Twitter. It is produced in association and partnership with AV Nation. You can find them all over the place, but avnation.tv is the place to go for all of their shows. Thank you very much for joining the LightCast. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get podcasts and the like, and we'll see you in the next one.
Yeah, join us next time.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
This is AV.
This
is AV Nation.
This is AV Nation.